So when foster care came, I thought that someone might finally see how bad it was for me. I thought that someone was finally going to save me. But here's the one thing that research backs up. The majority of children who enter foster care have already experienced heightened levels of trauma, abuse, neglect, and instability, even before the system ever gets a hold of them. Around 90% of kids in foster care have experienced at least one traumatic event, with nearly half reporting four or more types of complex trauma. So my mind was already in chaos long before I walked into the doors of a group home. And somewhere between year one and year six, I came to the conclusion that nobody was coming. Foster care didn't save me. It made me feel even more alienated, not only from myself, but from society.